Toledo is the only city in the state not organized for work among the blind citizens, and some effort should be made here to capitalize the 300 or more blind persons in the city. Joseph F. Klunk, August 15, 1923.
Dateline, October 1923. Toledo, Ohio. Toledo organization formed to help blind live normal lives. An appropriation of $300 per month has been made by the Toledo Community Chest for the development of the work for the blind in Toledo. An organization is being formed to carry on this work. The new organization will be known as the Toledo Society for the Blind. This is the second appropriation to be made for this purpose. The Community Chest made an appropriation 4 years ago for this work, but no organized effort has ever been made to carry on this work. A constitution and bylaws for the new organization have been drawn up and was presented to the Community Chest Board by Frank Saxton and Edward Evans of the Chamber of Commerce.
The purpose of the society is to further the interests of the blind and to open to them all possible avenues to independence and self-support through investigation, education, and recreation. Edward Evans.
Everything will be done that is possible in teaching men and women how to live normal social lives and to realize that blindness need not stop them from taking as much interest in life as they had before. Every attempt will be made to encourage the individual to use his own initiative and not depend too much on the help of others. Frank Saxton.
Educational work, including reading, typewriting, rug weaving, and basketry is planned. Special efforts will be made to teach the blind to get about alone and personal care. Industrially, it is planned to find a normal job for the normal worker, such as would be if he had not lost his sight. It is claimed that blind men and women can do many things in modern industrial plants.
Experience has proved that the blind are more capable in industry than they generally are supposed to be. Instances are not rare in which men surpass sighted competitors. Dr. Harry S. Will.
There could be no greater mistake, however, than to believe that those who do not need financial assistance need no consideration in our work. They need social companionship, something to do with their time, and some kind of interest. And these needs are no less than material needs. Grace Jameson.
Dateline, November 1923. Society to Aid Blind organized here. A new organization for the benefit of the city's handicap classes came into existence Tuesday when the Toledo Society for the Blind was founded in the Chamber of Commerce.
I don't need my eyes to see all that you've done. It's crystal clear to me just what I have become. I stand here as the proof. I'm telling you the honest truth. I don't need my eyes to see what you've done for me. No, I don't need my eyes to see what you've done for me. It's crystal clear to me just what I have become. I stand here as the proof. I'm telling you the honest truth. I don't need my eyes to see what you've done for me. I don't need my eyes to see. I don't need my eyes to see. I don't need my eyes to see what you've done.
My eye condition is a genetic eye condition called aniridia. Basically, in layman's terms, that means lack of an iris. So the colored portion of your eye that everyone is born with, I was born without, and also at different kinds of lighting conditions, my pupils don't dilate and constrict like most people's would. I learned that it can cause all kinds of internal body issues that most people don't even realize. So a lot of people that have aniridia can also have, heart failure, kidney failure, cancer, diabetes, and that can be an interesting condition, but it is very rare. So basically, I have aniridia, and then I have secondary glaucoma, which is the elevated intraocular eye pressure. So I first started coming to the Sight Center when I was in high school, kind of when I started getting hooked up with the Bureau of Services for the Visually Impaired. So the services were kind of provided by different contractors through the Sight Center, like orientation and mobility, assistive technology, things like that I was in need of learning how to do before I went to college. And then when I was in college, then they helped provide a lot of the different magnifiers and canes and things like that I needed. Growing up, I knew that I wanted to go into special education of some shape or sort. As I got a little bit older, I knew that I wanted to be an advocate for people that had vision loss, mostly because it irritated me when, people that had vision loss couldn't get the things that they needed or were being kind of, glanced over or gleaned over. When I went through my undergrad at University of Toledo, I initially went into special ed, mild to moderate needs, and then ended up switching my concentration to vision impairments due to having a severe vision loss or sudden, severe vision loss during my student teaching. But it ended up being a really good field for me to be in. So I kind of switched my concentration into vision impairments and then taught for 13 years as a teacher of the visually impaired. I would say my favorite thing has been just seeing the joy that you can bring to people and the hope. Hope is a big thing because some people come into our clinic here, for example, and they feel very frustrated and uncertain of what's going to happen after they leave here. And they sit down with someone like me who is working full time in this industry and has potentially less vision than them and is being, is able to be successful. So they feel, they feel more willing to ask questions. And half the time my sessions turn into counseling because they ask questions, they cry, they hug, all things like that. So to give somebody hope like that or to even just be an advocate and give them ideas of what they can and can't do is something that's always been, very rewarding for me.
Thomas Whitaker died quietly in June of 1979. At the time of his death, he had no family, and his friends had already passed. His death had gone mostly unnoticed until the Toledo Blade wrote an article about his passing, bringing it to the public's attention. However, Tom was known and cared for by thousands already, a fixture of downtown Toledo for over 35 years. Tom had low vision his entire life. In the mid-1930s, he lost his remaining sight, and at that time was receiving services through the Toledo Society for the Blind. In 1936, the agency was able to find him employment as a newspaper vendor. His corner, the intersection of Madison and Superior, in front of the Gardner Building. Tom was known for a few things: his red beret, which he was rarely without, his extensive record collection. He was also known for his guide dogs. His first, a Doberman named Rex, followed by Lulu, Bonnie, Lord Byron, and Sheba. Tom always stressed the importance of the person-guide-dog bond. He once said, "There's a lot of malarkey about seeing dogs. It's not fair to them. People get so they expect miracles from the dogs. A blind man has to work as much as the dog. It's a team, and the better we know and like each other, the better we help each other." Tom's first dog was paid for by the Toledo Society for the Blind. Subsequent dogs were always provided by the Toledo Blade. In 1940, the Society and the Kennel Society petitioned City Council to allow Tom to have a doghouse on his corner to shelter his guide from the elements while he worked. During his 35-year-plus tenure, Tom sold many, many thousands of newspapers, headlines about the end of the war, President Kennedy being shot, the moon landing. Newspaper vendors were part of people's lives. He would certainly have sold papers to the same people day after day. In Tom's final years, people showed him that he was still loved. They displayed it in small but meaningful ways. One of his guide dogs had passed. Readers sent checks to the Blade to pay for a new one. The paper returned all the checks and announced they would be paying the bill themselves. In 1973, he was moved to a nursing home. Sheba, his final dog, was not allowed to stay. Social worker brought her for visits and found a family to adopt her. The staff made sure he's always had a red beret. When one wore out, they bought him another one. When Tom died, a nurse ran his beret over so he could be buried with his trademark fashion accessory. Tom is buried at Forest Cemetery. As a final act of kindness, someone paid for Tom's marker. Engraved on the left is an image of Tom's constant companion through the second half of his life, a guide dog in a harness.
In those early days, very active with Lions Club was a place called Arkansas Enterprises for the Blind in Little Rock. Rosalind was the first orientation mobility instructor, and Rosalind was sent out there to work with, actually there was a visually impaired guy who taught mobility, Oliver Burke. And she went out there, probably was out there for at least a month. And then later, some of the universities developed programs. One of the first one in the country was Boston College, and it didn't have orientation mobility. Their graduates were called parapatologists. So if you were, and that became a kind of a classic thing. Well, were you a parapathologist or were you a mobility instructor? And in our area, Western Michigan University was the big program for orientation mobility, and that's where Dan Zink went. And they also had a program for the rehabilitation teachers. So over the years, that's primarily where people came from, either Western Michigan orientation mobility or rehab teacher program.
Arthur Swearingen was a training supervisor at the Toledo Society for the Blind. In 1949, he and his wife Ann started Toledo's Blind Bowling League. It started with just one team, but would grow and expand to 2 leagues in the area with 45 people in each league. Arthur's son John was in the league and has fond memories of participating.
My sisters were in the league too, and myself and my dad and a bunch of blind people we know. Guys, people I worked with and knew. We had to set up the rails and everything. That was my job to do that. Originally, the old ones were galvanized pipe, and Art, my brother Art, and some of the people, they made the stands at the boys' club.
The Toledo Blind Bowling Leagues were very active in blind bowling tournaments. These events were held yearly and would rotate to a different city each year.
Dayton, Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Toledo, all over. Get a bus, load everybody on a bus, take them there. Or people could drive, have somebody drive.
Today, blind bowling is alive and well in Northwest Ohio. The Low Vision Coalition of Allen County has a team. Jacob King describes the blind bowling team in Lima.
The blind bowling was really the brainchild of Pam Schrader, one of our most active Low Vision Coalition members. She knew the gentleman who owns Westgate Lanes very well, and so she introduced the idea, and we navigated a day. So once a month, I believe, we do the second Tuesdays is our blind bowling day. They were great, the guys at Westgate. For us, it's always been a social kind of event. We have not done a lot of competition until now. I am very excited to actually, kind of compete and add scores. It's one of our most popular and fun events for sure.
In the fall of 2023, blind bowling returned to the Toledo area for the first time in years. Andrea Marley organized the Toledo Blind Bowling League.
when I was living in Cleveland, I was a part of the Blind Bowling League in Cleveland, and a president of the league for a year. And I really enjoyed participating in that league. So when I moved back to Toledo, I wanted to start up a league here because we didn't have one currently. So I took the initiative to kind of put things together, contacted the different bowling alleys around in the local area, and see which alley was willing to host our league, and then researched how to get rails. So now we have guide rails for each of our teams. So we're slowly growing. We started off with 5 members, and now we're up to approximately 15. Our league is made up of partially sighted, totally blind, and sighted bowlers. This year, I'm making sure that we are sanctioned as a league under the American Blind Bowlers Association and the Midwest Blind Bowlers Association. Being sanctioned under both of those gives us the ability to participate in local tournaments, either the Midwest Blind Bowling Tournament, which happens usually around March. There's other tournaments that happen throughout the Midwest that we could potentially participate in. And then there's also a national blind bowling tournament that happens every year, and that happens in some pretty fun locations. Like I think last year's tournament was in Reno.
If you are interested in blind bowling, check to see if you have a local league near you. You're sure to have a great time being a part of this tradition.
October 15th is designated White Cane Safety Awareness Day, and it's a day where it kind of highlights that legally people are obligated to stop for anyone crossing the street with a white cane. And so we wanted this event to kind of like highlight that day and kind of awareness around white canes and safety regarding people using them. A lot of what really made the White Cane Walk was the participation of all of our community partners. I know the Sylvania Sunrise Lions Club was so helpful. Really, our partners helped to make the White Cane Walk. I think at our front desk, we had like the registration, and then people would start right out the sidewalk here. And it was a lap around the sidewalk, like around our whole entire building. And people would walk with a partner, and one would be blindfolded and use a white cane, and the other one would be their sighted guide. And they would take turns. And we'd have Danny, who was our program director, giving like tips and techniques about how to be a sighted guide and how to use a white cane walk or white cane so that people could experience both situations. Dawn Christensen, our executive director at the time, was proficient in Braille, and so she did like Brailler demonstrations. We had like a sensory table where we had different objects in boxes, and people would try to guess by feeling, by touch, like what those were. I think we had a blindfolded hole-in-one putt-putt. We borrowed like a big mobile putt-putt square and had people blindfolded try to make a hole-in-one. The big thing was we had a blindfolded eating challenge, I think at least the first 2 or 3 years, where we would get volunteers who were respected in the community, and they would be challenged to eat an entire meal blindfolded. And I know the one year it was spaghetti and salad and bread and butter, and it was a fun challenge. But Danny spoke throughout, giving tips and pointers, and it was fun.
May of 1943, executive director then, Estelle Parsons, was visiting with Don Hegemeister at the Ohio and Michigan Paper Company. Don casually mentioned that he was kind of making arrangements to fold what was then called Simplex Paper Company paper liners for the war effort. Now, they were 3 pieces of waterproof paper, and they had to be folded by hand into giant envelopes that items would be put into and then sent overseas to our fighting men and women. This is kind of a new technology at that time, and when properly assembled, there were no seams. So it had to be done right. This allowed for items to be shipped overseas and for the items not to be spoiled once they got there. So Donald warned Estelle, don't get too excited about this, all right? We're not for sure that you guys are going to be able to help out. But Estelle, being Estelle, agreed not to get too excited, but she was an enthusiastic person, always looking for opportunities for the blind. So here's what she did. Called the emergency board meeting. She was not waiting. Told the board, we need to enlarge the society's building to allow for more production rooms. She was a forward thinker. The Toledo Lions assisted and also managed to get some work tables and storage area set up. Well, when the contract was officially offered, at that point, they were ready. 25 workers set to go. Those individuals, all blind to some degree. For some of them, this was the first time, the first steady work they'd ever had. And so for 2 years, 1943 to 45, workers folded literally thousands of liners every day from 8:30 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. By the time the war was over, they had produced nearly a million liners for the war effort. Now, in addition to that contract with Ohio and Michigan Paper, the shop also strung thousands of tags and spliced thousands of pieces of rope. In fact, from 1943 to 45, that workshop made the highest earnings ever up until that point. It's an amazing opportunity for workers to build their skills. They were able to find community employment after the war because of that experience. And in addition to their wages, the workers felt good, right? They were contributing. They were doing their part to aid the war effort and just the self-esteem value alone. This contract with the Ohio and Michigan Paper Company would be a precursor to other industrial contracts all through the 1950s. This was an important time in the history of the Toledo Society for the Blind.
While taking a look at our history, we would be remiss if we didn't take a glimpse at some of our social clubs. One of those such clubs was known as the Happy Times Club. In 1923, 12 blind women organized the club. After debating the name for several weeks, they settled on Happy Times because they felt this club would encourage members to get out of the house and be happy. In the early days, Executive Director Estelle Parsons oversaw many of the group's activities. Mrs. H.W. Geenan taught the women basketry, a valuable skill that allowed the women to make money. Jessie Wells, a Board of Trustee member and employee of the Toledo Library, would prepare a book report for each meeting, as at the time the latest books were not available in Braille right away. According to a 1963 Blade article, the club served many purposes. Part of the club functioned as a support group for women to assist each other in learning from shared experiences. At the start of each meeting, every attendee was paired off with a partner to ensure no one was alone. There was also many educational and recreational opportunities for members. The organization placed an emphasis in independence. For many years, the Toledo Federation of Women's Clubs and the Lions Club provided transportation to members. At its height of popularity, there were between 40 and 50 active members. The organization eventually expanded to include male participants. Happy Times officially disbanded in the 1990s, but is still remembered fondly for all the activities and for the lives that it touched.
I think the first satellite clinics were both in our Findlay location, which was, a great partnership through one of our biggest referral sources. And we also had a satellite clinic off of Central Avenue in Toledo.
The idea is to come for the one visit that sort of starts off most of the services, the clinic visit. Most of the people aren't driving anymore. So you need to get to Toledo, and serving now 18 counties, it's difficult to find someone who can drive you here for what could be an hour and a half drive, stay for a 3-hour appointment, and then drive you back home. It's all day. So we decided that we should look for more ways to shorten that and make our services more accessible. So we were able to talk to ProMedica and work out some space in Defiance. So we had something then out west.
The Defiance clinic that hosted us, they really just wound up needing their space. As their practice grew, they had more demand for, what they do with different rooms and whatnot. And we were really lucky that we were able to find another community location that would host us. What's really neat about the Fremont Clinic is that I was in case management one day and somebody mentioned how long the drive was for them to be seen. And I said, we'd really like to have a clinic in your community, but we can't find a location, because initially we thought we had to be in a medical practice. We thought we had to be in a doctor's office. And this gentleman said, well, my church just opened and we're really focused on community services. Maybe you could work out of our Sunday school. So I thought, well, we could try it. We've never tried it before, but let's give it a go. And so now we're in year 2. It's been really well attended. People very much appreciate being served right in their own community.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, if we had enough optometrists, we could do one in every community. And that would be amazing. It's having an optometrist that has the time to do that and then being able to staff everything. But I think that currently there's one in every direction other than north, but there's not much further north. So
John Gerlich was obviously very instrumental at the Society for the Blind and the Sheltered Workshop because, for many, many years, the bulk of the work in the Sheltered Workshop was related to AP Parts, which was his company that made muffler clamps and brackets. And what we did was we packaged thousands, if not millions, of muffler clamps and brackets from probably 1.25 inch to 4 and 5, 6-inch clamps and brackets to hold mufflers onto the vehicles.
He would come through the shop and he would bring people to see the type of work we did. And he would point out it wasn't an easy job because you could get steel in your fingers very easy. He tried to get us pretty good jobs.
Later years, he was inducted into the Automotive Hall of Fame, and he was given credit for the man who put the roar in the Roaring 20s because he developed a cutout for mufflers that made the very loud sounds that people liked. He and his wife started their business in a basement and grew to be Quester Corporation. He liked to fish. He always had stories.
When Mr. Gerlich could, he would see Lions Club drivers would always fill the freezer with the fish.
And so every Friday was a fish dinner for the lunch, and it was the fish that John Gerlich and Lyle Kirk and their friends had caught.
We had a book club for a little while, and he really pushed that for people. We had bowling. We had summer bowling at the Bowladrum, and from there we went to the University of Toledo's lanes. I think Mr. Gerlich was behind a lot of it to push it in order for people to get out and have fun.
The transition from the old building to the new building was so exciting. Going from 1819 Canton Avenue, which was fabulous during its height of the peak of its service to the community, to this new building, which was really designed for the most current and most accessible opportunities for the vision impaired, was filled with joy, and it was a lot of work. John did something very wise. He worked hand in hand with the service providers to understand what their needs would be and to make sure that the building was structured in a way that it could maximize the opportunity for success for anybody with vision impairments, and that there was room for growth for the future. It was an exciting day, trucks coming in, loading pieces up and moving them over, but that felt like the easiest part. The excitement of moving into the building, getting everyone situated in their offices, planning the opening ceremony, which was in June of 2007. Those were the pieces that really felt empowering. At the time that we moved here, it was structured so that people didn't have this long walk through this dark hall, but rather there was bright space that was easy to access from the lobby waiting area. And I think that was a big win for everybody involved with the new building. This campus is designed for people who are older adults and people who have disabilities. And while we know that children and young people do use the site center services, we know that people that can be most challenged are the older adults trying to access this location. And this campus felt just like the right place.
There have been a lot of people that have come in and out of our doors over our 100 years of service. A name that has popped up again and again is that of Margaret Langendorfer Wenzel. Margaret's sight issues began around 3rd grade when she was told that she would eventually lose her sight to glaucoma. This is when she first received services for the Toledo Society for the Blind in approximately 1924. Even as a child, Margaret had wanted to become a teacher. She worked very hard at this goal. She was an honors student at Libby High School and at the University of Toledo. At the time, she was unable to get a teaching degree from UT due to her being blind. Upon graduation, she took temporary residence at the Columbus School for the Blind while attending classes at The Ohio State University, where she would go on to get her teaching degree. Upon graduating, she secured employment at the Ohio Commission for the Blind as a vision rehabilitation teacher, a position she would hold until 1974. Margaret traveled throughout the state, having worked in 60 of the state's 88 counties throughout her career. She taught daily living skills, Braille, how to use talking book machines, and much more. She even taught skills like crocheting, sewing, and leatherwork, valuable skills that allowed her students to make a living. Margaret was an advocate for the blind. She fought hard for blind students to attend the university of their choice with the major that they wanted. She also fought for blind workers to be paid fair compensation for their abilities. Throughout her life, Margaret was involved in various activities at the Society. She participated in dance and music classes as a teenager. In the 1950s, she raised funds for the annual camping activities. As an adult, she served as president of the organization's Progressive Club and was very active in family nights and the Happy Times Club. In her later years, Margaret served as a member of the Society's Board of Trustees.
I believe the first camp was actually focused on O&M, Orientation Mobility. And we stayed at the dorms at University of Toledo. And we pretty much did a lot of travel work. So we would have to find certain classrooms, like they'd tell us, go find this class, and they would give us a number. And they would take us to the building, and it was up to us to sort of use our canes and stuff to navigate the hallways and also like read the Braille on the signs. And we also did a lot of outdoor travel, like just walking around the campus and making our way to like restaurants and stuff like that. And it was pretty fun. The the long distance traveling, going from the dorms to on-campus restaurant, we would walk as a group, and they sort of spread us out a little bit, so we can not be clumped up and actually practice our own mobility skills. When it was stuff more like the like finding the classroom kind of thing that I mentioned before, that was on our own. So they would just take us to the building and say, okay, you're going to be safe in here, so there's nothing to worry about. So just go find it on your own. If you can't, that's okay.
Hey, Jimmy, it's Mrs. Board. You ready for camp?
There, I'm not dead.
Are you ready for camp, Jimmy?
Yeah. How are you taking pictures?
How did you know I was doing that?
She didn't say anything.
I think I switched these girls' rooms. I didn't know which was A and which was B.
Yeah, it's okay now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see. the girls, there's two.
Okay, that's all you have.
Okay, in this room I have Sam and Joe, correct?
Yeah. Cut fingers.
Yeah, someone to the ER. How's it looking, Dan? Spread wise.
You really are doing a nice job.
I mean, fresh vegetables are more canned vegetables. You want it to taste better.
Yes, we want it to taste better. What's the point of making
Fresh vegetables taste better, but then again, it's cheaper if I can.
You can check on the tag. Usually it'll say like a unit price. Like this is 17.6 cents per ounce. This one's only 14.7 cents. So it doesn't sound much.
You guys are doing a great job. Looks like everybody's
The same room
Till 2 a.m. They're right next to each other. Why?
So what's been your favorite activity?
Hey, Lori.
Hey, Joe.
What's up?
What are you guys making?
Peanut butter cookies.
Mmm.
Jenna and I here.
Are you? How many you putting in a row?
4 and I'll use these.
Remember the big Christmas parties that the downtown Lions Club used to put on. Blind children they used to have a separate party, but then they combined it. And the children all went up to see Santa. I don't recall what the boys got, but us girls all got nation dolls. And you always look forward to getting that nation doll. When they'd have the party, they started out where they served ice cream and cookies. The Lions Club ladies made the cookies. At that time, they'd send you home with bags of groceries. Well, they quit doing that because too many bags of groceries got dropped and mayonnaise would go all over the place. And they would have music where people could get up and dance to. It was really a lot of fun.
In 1966, the Toledo Society for the Blind, in cooperation with the Ohio Society for the Prevention of Blindness, the Delta Gamma Sorority, and the Toledo Eye, Ear, Nose, and Throat Society, launched Operation Lazy Eye. Its mission was to detect vision issues in preschool children and to address vision correction early before it became permanent. Conditions that they were examining for included amblyopia in children who were cross-eyed. It was a common misperception at the time that if a child was cross-eyed, it would eventually correct itself as the child got older. Volunteers from both the Delta Gamma Sorority and the Toledo Society for the Blind were trained as eye screeners. They would examine children at nurseries and Head Start programs, and sometimes at the society itself. If issues were suspected, volunteers would recommend that the parents take the child to an ophthalmologist, and each child would receive milk and a cookie afterwards. There was a strong emphasis placed on the parents being responsible for their children's vision, and that if they suspected that their kid might have a vision problem, that they needed to seek out professional treatment. In its first year, out of the 3,000 children that were screened, 300 of that number was referred to an eye doctor for further examination. The program would run for years, eventually dropping its code name. Early childhood screenings are now conducted in the schools or by a pediatrician. Operation Lazy Eye provided a service that was greatly needed at a time. It screened thousands of children over the years and connected the ones that needed it to resources to help to improve their vision.
This is a Braille typewriter. This is a slate and stylus. For many years, a group of volunteers would transcribe materials using solely these tools. These women would have weekly meetings at a library on Collingwood Avenue where they would gather and manually transcribe all sorts of materials, including books. They would also make sure to proofread and correct any of their mistakes. This group was first organized in 1955 as part of the National Federation of Temple Sisterhoods and the Jewish Braille Institute. During their time, they transcribed thousands of materials. They would transcribe for many organizations across the region, including the Sight Center. Alice Levy joined the group in 1955, where she was responsible for recruiting and training new members, which would eventually include men. And due to this expansion of her hard efforts, she became the chairman in 1960, a position she would hold for 26 years. To become a transcriber, each person was required to complete a 2-year course and submit 35 pages of Braille. Transcribing has evolved over the years. Although Braille typewriters, slates, and stylus are still in use, more modern methods are used for larger Brailing projects. Computer programs translate text to Braille characters, and large Braille embosser printers print out materials much faster. However, for many years, Alice Levy and her volunteers were the only resources many blind readers had to be able to get their materials translated. In 1986, Alice was awarded the John Gerlich Distinguished Service Award for many years of service to the blind. Transcribing services are still available through the Sight Center. Email info@sightcenternwo.org for more information.
In 1984, 13-year-old Shannon Gray won a naming contest to name the Sight Center's new mascot. Shannon named the fellow Dr. Dewlion. Other suggested names included Leon, Big Bones, and Weird Eyes. Executive Director Barry McEwen talks about the popularity of this lion.
It was a big costume. I could wear it. I think I had to be barefoot because I couldn't cover my shoes or something with it. It was hot. And I think maybe my older son probably was 8 or 10, 12 years old at the time. He may have worn it. There were women that wore it. So people from my size, probably down to people 5 foot tall or 4.5 foot tall, wore it. It was pretty baggy on them. But yes, it was very hot, and but it was popular. You know, kids loved it, and Lions Club members would use it. I think we maybe joint owned it with the Lions Club, and because I imagine at the time they were $300 or $400 for a costume like that. It was popular, and it was hot.
The 2007 book about John Gerlich's life was titled John Gerlich, Founder, Father, Fisherman. The inclusion of the word fisherman paid tribute to a title that was very important to John. It was a huge part of both his personal and professional lives. He would routinely take business partners, clients, and other board members to his boat on Lake Erie.
They'd fish. They'd bring those back to a place in Port Clinton where apparently the fish were cleaned and frozen. And then once a year, we would send a driver with a van down to Port Clinton, and they would pick up all these frozen fish and bring them back. We'd put them in the cooler, and with the sheltered workshop, we also had a cafeteria, and so every Friday was a fish dinner.
I'll tell you, they'd have that freezer just packed with fish. And they'd have to watch, because sometimes you'd find a couple pieces that was freezer burnt because it didn't get put to the front.
John would also advertise that his company, AP Parts, would take donations of perch, sheephead, bass, catfish, and other fish that were large enough to fillet. Former employees have shared stories of the freezers always being filled with the donated fish. This tradition would last at least a couple decades. It was one that was always remembered fondly by those who recall the Friday fish dinners. The October 1983 60th anniversary edition of the Site Center's newsletter featured pictures of all the executive directors to that point. There was a picture of Dr. Harry S. Will, Estelle Parsons, Linda Clark, Lyle Kirk, Don Norwood, and then current executive director Barry McEwen. But there was one director that no picture was available for. Grace Jamison was the second executive director for the Toledo Society for the Blind. She was there from March 1924 to sometime in 1925, a little over a year according to Estelle Parsons. And for a while, not much was known about her. But we now know that she was a social worker. Grace was also a graduate of Toledo University. She had been employed at some point with the Social Services Federation. In its earlier years, the Toledo Society for the Blind was located in the Social Services building, so we can assume that's how she became aware of the job opportunity. In 1924, there was a Toledo Times article where Grace discussed services that were available for individuals with secure income. There could be no greater mistake, however, than to believe that these who do not need financial assistance need no consideration in our work. They need social companionship, something to do with their time, and some kind of interest. And these needs are no less than that of material needs. Then in 1925, she left the society to become the acting sergeant in charge of the women's division of the Toledo Police Department. She had a memorable quote in 1927 while giving advice to young women. Mind your own business and not the auto toots. Don't think nice car and nice face means nice boy. It's okay to roll your socks, but don't roll your eyes. Grace was heavily involved in the Toledo Clubber case. She would patrol what is now known as the Old West End with 3 other female officers. When asked if she felt that this was a dangerous task, she said, "The women could kill more rapidly than the clubber could club to kill." At this point in the research, we had learned a lot of interesting facts about Grace, but we still hadn't discovered a picture of her. Then, in October 2023, just a few days before our 100th anniversary, we finally had a break in the case. From the January 3rd, 1930 edition of the Lima Morning Star and Republican Gazette, a brief blurb about Grace being hired as a social worker for the Allen County Family Welfare Association. And there was a picture. Finally, there in black and white, we knew what she looked like, and now we could include her picture alongside the other pictures of our former executive directors.
When I first started working at the site center, it was in the sheltered workshop, and my boss was none other than the Dick Henry. And, first job, very young, scared to death that I was going to do something wrong. And Dick Henry could be the most kind, loving, caring person. But when he would yell out your name, Dawn Clem, I would just shudder in my seat. I was terrified of him. But over the years, I learned that truly he was just a pussycat. And he loved what he did. He loved the people that worked with him. And truly just an amazing, amazing gentleman. Again, I had zero work experience when I started there. And as long as it took for him to explain a job to you and gave you the time to make sure you were performing at your best, he was there. He was there by your side every step of the way. To have been in his presence, to have worked for him was truly, truly, truly an honor. And, even after he retired, we would spend time going to baseball games, or we'd talk on the phone, and really up till the end, he was just the man I always remembered, kind and loving.
For the first few years of its existence, the Toledo Society for the Blind had rented space in a number of locations in downtown Toledo. This worked at first, but the society had a strong need to grow. In 1927, the organization was finally able to move to a home of its own. In October, the society finally incorporated, due to the large number of people that needed the organization to be incorporated in order to leave it a bequest. Edward Drummond Libby had died 2 years prior. Now that the society was incorporated, it was able to receive a $10,000 gift from the Libby estate. On November 1st, 1927, the society purchased its home at 718 Michigan Street with a $10,000 down payment. Board President Edward E. Evans took out a mortgage in his own name for the remaining $3,500. A few months later, France Swain, the widow of Noah Swain, left the society nearly $29,000. They were able to take Mr. Evans off the mortgage. The Michigan Street location needed a lot of work over the years. The Lions donated a lot of time and energy repairing the 10-room building, including connecting a carriage house that served as a workshop. The building would serve as a home for the organization for nearly 30 years. During the Depression, clients were taught how to can vegetables that grew in the backyard. Individuals were taught valuable work skills in a workshop, and there were countless meetings of both the Happy Times and progressive clubs. Today, the property at 718 Michigan looks a lot different. Gone is the building and workshop, and its place an apartment complex. However, the rich history of this structure will always be remembered.
Braille Race Car Rally, I think they started that probably in the 50s or 60s. That may have been Lyle Kirk started that. It attracted I don't know the official name of it, maybe the Toledo Sports Car Club. Their members would provide the cars, and then the route was put in Braille, and the blind person was the navigator. And so I don't know, it maybe be a 50, 60 mile route they had to do. I'm not sure what they did for low vision people, if they did anything, because they didn't want the driver to be able to see what the printed material was. So I think it was all in Braille. And, just like any other rally, drive at 35 mile an hour for 2.5 minutes and turn left. And, they try and confuse you and try and have routes where maybe the other cars are coming towards you and you're going the other way. I think the sports car people probably made the routes because they were used to having sports car rallies. But then they converted it to Braille, and then they had to have the navigator translate the Braille to verbal instructions to the driver. So yeah, and they did that, I think, for a number of years. I imagine it got interrupted, and then periodically it would come back as an activity. But people really had a good time with it. The chair caning is much more sophisticated than it sounds, and that is good. And today is really hard to find a chair caner. People who are doing antique restorations, it's difficult. Yeah, there was actually a room built in the basement when the building was built. There was a high humidity moisture room to store the cane, so it kept moist all the time. And then the room where the caning was done was built with skylights, so there was good lighting in there for those who had partial vision. And I remember Dick Henry, who was the Shelford Workshop director for many years, who was both legally blind and not there's a definition for it, but it would have qualified for, quote, legally deaf. He and his wife had both gone to the school for the blind, and he had learned caning down there. But Dick was just wonderful as the workshop director, and ran the workshop for probably 20 or 25 years.
Madge Levinson was an absolute hoot.
Madge was a dynamite. She was very theatrical.
She would always make you feel welcome, that it's so good to see you. When are you coming back?
She'd been with the agency, I believe, started as a volunteer coordinator, and that's when I first met her.
In today's world, it probably wouldn't be appropriately acceptable, but I mean, she hugged everybody, and just really made the volunteers feel super appreciated.
Madge had a way about her that just would bring people in. The volunteers, you might have first started with just wanting to volunteer an hour here and there. And Madge had this way of just bringing you into the agency and sharing the story. And within a short period of time, you loved the Sight Center, back then the Toledo Society for the Blind. You loved their mission. You wanted to be there. We had so many dedicated long-term volunteers, and I give that all to Madge.
She's very inclusive, whether you are Christian, whether you are Baptist, whatever the denominations that you are in. For me and her, everybody is welcome as a person. There is no barrier as far as, I came from another culture. I was there with a heavy accent and sometimes I mispronounce words, but she will never make you feel like you are lesser than anybody else there.
She was extremely instrumental in getting SCAN, the Sight Center Audio Network, started.
And that was another passion of hers. There she could share her theatrical person. She loved being on stage, as many people know through the rep and commercials and movie parts. On air, when she was reading, she just really interjected the theatrics of it, and she was just fun. Little bitty thing, but the biggest heart there ever was.